Okay, and we're off. Okay, I might be on a very slight delay, so I'll try to look out for that. So, I'll just give a little background while we're in this prologue section. On the bottom, we have TGH. On the top left, we have fladervy, and on the top right, Nero. These are all very top-tier runners of this game. In fact, in this category, all having a sub-30 time, which is basically like probably one of the hardest milestones you can break in speedrunning of this game. Nero actually getting his just yesterday with the 29:58, I believe. So these are all really top-tier runners, pretty close in PBs. It should be good. TGH being the world record holder, Flad being second place, and Nero being sixth, I believe. And starting off going into City, it's a short little chapter. I'll just try to note the movement mechanics that are used in little bits around here. So the fastest way of moving in this game is generally based off of like little exploits of your dash that you have that gives you extra speed. You can jump off of the ground while in dash speed to maintain that momentum into the air. So you can dash forward and jump, you get a dash jump. You can dash down right into the floor and then jump, and just because of your angle you get a little bit more speed, and that's called a hyper dash, which is one of the most commonly used tech in this game just because of its speed. And then there's wall bouncing, where you can dash upwards onto a wall, like on TGH's screen just a moment ago. And that allows you to wall jump while in dash speed and then take that momentum upwards instead. And those are all just some of the more basic things that'll be used more advanced ways later. This is just a little starting section. Minute long level. Pretty good time from Tej out of there. He's really consistent at that. 103, 107, and 111 from each of the runners. Just a little bit of a difference between each. So from here, chapters will start introducing their own little gimmicks. This is Old Site. It's also pretty short, but it has some specialties to it. So after this cutscene triggers, it activates the dream sequence, where you can dash through these dream blocks. You fly through them until you pass to the other side. If you ride one into a wall, you die, but otherwise, then you can just jump out of it with some nice speed. You can jump as you reach the end of the dream blocks and get a little extra height out of them. And that's used in some places to do little extra skips. And then in this sequence, Battle Line is chasing you. And she follows you with your exact movements just by a 3-second delay. So a lot of strats for these screens are made like prematurely with just knowing that you... Like here, for example, he ultras down and then makes it back just before Battle Line reaches him. That allows him to make it through the gap. And then later on, the Battle Lines start multiplying, and now there's like 5 of them. But as long as you replicate the strats right, you can always get around them just fine. It's just about knowing your own movement well. Good old sites from each of them, all pretty close on this chapter. And then ending is the awake section, which is you like waking up and redoing the same chapter but without all the dream stuff going on, so you just kind of... Tej having a rough time here. Getting a bunch of accidental wall kicks off of those blocks, which is a thing that can make you lose all your speed accidentally. But yeah, you just run to the end without all the gimmicks in the way, and then the chapter's over. Going into Chapter 3, the difficulty takes a huge spike here. A lot would say that this chapter is harder than, like, 4 and 5, the upcoming ones. Like, this chapter can be really brutal. Especially in a race setting like we're in now, this can, like, set the tone for how the race will go. Because generally, if you're gonna have a big time loss in a race, it may as well be this chapter. It's pretty likely. So these rooms all have these rotating dust bunnies in them. You die on contact to pretty much any bad thing in this game, these included. And that makes movement here really hard. It's really closed in, and you have to be able to replicate the same movement, getting around moving cycles over and over. And it can be pretty tough. And another thing about cycles is that if you ever mess one up and die, because you die on contact to anything, it messes up your movement, because whenever you die and respawn, you're on a thing called death cycle, where the cycles aren't the same because you have to sit you through your death animation. So it's like a slightly different cycle. And that makes you have to know like 2 different cycles for each screen. And you can tell sometimes if they get into bad situations how much they've actually practiced backups for those screens. They can be really useful to know. So no one having too much trouble out of the first section, you're going now to the huge mess, which is this large room and the 3 ones connecting to it, where you go around and get rid of the boxes, laundry, and books. You can do them in any order, but there is a fastest one, just by the obstacles that are there. So this is the boxes section that's done first. Little wall jump there you saw from Tej, you'll see it again in a minute from the other 2 runners, where you can jump off of the wall just on the edge of it, graze against the spikes, and they don't actually kill you. That'll be done a couple more times later on. They're pretty useful in a lot of places. This is the books section. Probably the more tame, the tame section of the 3. Then going into laundry section, this section has some difficult cycle skips, like that one that he just did, hopping over the dust bunny right before it raises up. This one has some pretty crazy strats to it. Tej making it through well. Narrow missing the same thing, falling a little bit behind. Flood just entering it now. So on TGH's screen, now he's completed the huge mess, he can make it out of that room, go up the elevator shaft, and we'll be making our way to the suite, the end of the resort. On our way there, there's a skip that we can do to skip getting a key, involving a tech called Demo Dash that I guess I'll explain now since he's on his way to it, where you can essentially get a crouching hitbox from Adeline, which when you're crouching, it decreases your hitbox down to 4 pixels, and use that to barely dash through gaps and spikes, since they have 4 pixel windows in between them. So if you can angle it pixel perfectly, he can get through there just like that. That allows you to skip going down and getting a key. The other 2 players will probably be going for it just in a moment. Flat getting it there as well, nice. That trick is one of the more brutal parts of this chapter, since it is really precise, because you only have 1 pixel to make it through. Narrow and Flad both getting that. So these are all pretty decent resorts from each of these runners, nothing too bad. Something you hate to see in races for this game is when someone has a really rough resort, and then like the entire rest of the race they may end up behind, hard to catch up, since the other chapters are a little bit more tame than this one, I feel. Oshiro chase going pretty smooth for these guys so far. Just making sure that they don't get in his way. Not too bad if you are able to replicate the same cycle strats over and over. 4:26 is a pretty solid time. Sub 4:30 is like really like top tier. If you can get that, that's really good. 4:34, just a little bit behind for Narrow. And Flad following right behind. A low 444. So yeah, now we have Chapter 4 Ridge. This one can be tricky, but for the most part it's not quite as bad. The few gimmicks that we have here are bouncing clouds, which in some cases can actually help us get more height. We have the wind, which can either push us back or forward and change our speed, but more notably, not while we're dashing. While you're dashing, you can fight against the wind completely, and that makes the movement in wind rooms a lot faster than you'd expect it to be, especially when we make it to the end when the wind gets really strong. There was another spike jump there a moment ago from Tej. Just allows you to get up to that section a little quicker. Can do an auto-score skip over that big gap like Tej is doing. Just use that block to get a little bit of extra speed and you can just fly straight over it. You can stack Madeline's speed with moving objects in this game, and it's used in a lot of places just because of how fast you can go, just by like standing on a moving block or something. All of them getting through pretty nicely so far out of that first section. Soon nearing the end here of Ridge. This is a pretty short chapter. It's like slightly less than 3 minutes long for these guys. They're nearing the cliff face section where the wind gets super strong and constantly pushes against you. If you're walking, you can barely even move at all, and so pretty much all of the movement that you'll be see TGH doing is just doing like hyper dashes forward to fight against the wind. That way your speed isn't harmed too much. There's also these snowballs, which can kill you if you hit them right in the front, but you can bounce on top of the snowballs, which you may see used as a boost here. You can bounce off the snowballs. They give you your dash back if they decide to go for it, and then you can get a little extra boost. Something you can opt to go for. You can determine where the snowballs are going to go based off of your own movement. There's no RNG in this game, is something pretty good to note about it. The few things that do change from run to run are just based off of how Madeline moves. Like Oshiro at the end of Chapter 3, he follows you, the snowballs follow you. Everything is set to have certain patterns. This is a really good ridge time for fladervy, 2:42. That's pretty amazing. That's like crazy. So now in Chapter 5, Temple. This chapter has a lot of moving platforms. It also has more of these bubbles. These red ones are slightly different though, rather than just giving you a little bit of extra distance in the air. They travel infinitely until they collide with a wall, or until you dash out of them. And the chapter makes you use it in some places to get across long gaps. Nice boost from TGH there. That block gives you a lot of speed. Oh, he's going for the 5B strat. I should have expected this, but I guess I'll explain it now. We may not see every runner do it because this is like a fairly new thing, but TGH is going to the B-side alternative of Chapter 5 right now. The main game, the main story chapters are all called A-sides, and in post-game you unlock harder versions of them by collecting these tapes right here. And the thing about B-sides is completing the B-sides will actually continue the story. It'll unlock the next A-side for you. So TGH is going to make it to Chapter 6 by completing the B-side version of Chapter 5. Which, done really well, this level can actually be done shorter. You can complete this level in well under 3 minutes. So it is used sometimes in high level to save extra time. So, coming up shortly, he's going to be doing a huge skip. The reason that this level is so fast, where you skip 2 keys by making it to the end of this room. He can jump in the ceiling and do a wall jump immediately, and that should cancel his upwards momentum. No, yeah, he's gonna have to retry it. So basically what happened there is when he goes up into that screen transition, the game tries to move you into it by moving you up so that you land on the platform. But if you immediately wall jump and just barely tap your jump, you can fall back down like that below the platform and actually re-enter through the screen without landing up above it. And then since the entrance for that checkpoint is like in the ceiling, it doesn't have anywhere to place you. So it puts you at the end of the screen, and then you can just skip to the end of it. Whereas you would normally need a bubble to travel through it. So that skips getting 2 keys. On the other end, in 5A from fladervy and narrow, they're both in the unraveling section. It has the Seekers, which are some enemies that you'll also be seeing shortly from TGH. They dash at you, and just like the snowballs, they follow you exactly. So they trace where you go, and they dash towards you. You can bounce on them. They can hit switches for you to unlock the next screen. So they're actually pretty useful if you can deal with them correctly. There's a lot going on here for me to talk about it. I haven't commentated a race where they were in an A side and a B side at the same time. So now TGH is dealing with the Seekers. You can use one to get a little boost there, make it safely to the end of the screen. When they respawn, they have this little shockwave explosion that you can use like that to boost yourself to the end. So now they're all in the each chapter's respective Theo section, where you pick up Theo, who's trapped in a crystal, and to make it to the next screen, you have to carry him to the end with you, which you would think would be detrimental to your movement, but you can actually use him to maintain some crazy ultra speed, where you stack the speed of 2 hyper dashes together, and use the animation of picking him up to interrupt you, which normally you would lose the speed due to friction with the floor. But you can pick him up to kind of interrupt that and then just jump and go flying. It was kind of a rough explanation, but that's sort of how it works. So now after the 5A and 5B split, now TGH and Narrow are kind of tied up. TGH getting a 225 with 1 retry exiting from the map. So that actually lost him a bit more time from the 225. So yeah, it allowed Narrow to catch up a little bit here. Now they're both entering into Chapter 6, Flad just right behind. You have this little dream sequence here, and then you enter into the chapter itself at the very bottom of the mountain. Right off the bat, there's a neat little wall bounce that you can do here, Narrow getting it, Tej getting it as well, nice. You can use that to skip going around and up. Normally you have to take a different path to get to the top. That's just a slightly faster way since you can jump right through. It saves like 3 seconds. And it is pretty precise. There's only a couple pixels where you can get that wall bounce without hitting the spikes and dying. And then you have these crush blocks. These are other very useful moving platforms. They take you flying across the screen and they move really fast, so you can use them for big boosts of speed like I was talking about before. These guys are no exception. It's going to be used almost every time we even use a block. Is usually they like hyper dash off of it. You saw them in the dream sequence, but you also have feathers. Feathers are kind of unique in their way of movement in that it's like full analog movement. You can move in any degree, and there are intricacies to that. First of all, it's easier to use with an analog stick, of course, instead of D-pad, so you have more angles of movement. And also, you have to control how many degrees you move a second. Like, if you move the feather too sharply, you start to lose speed. So you kind of have to keep track of that and just get used to it. It is pretty finicky. There are some sections in this chapter where there is a, like, top and bottom path that both can be used. I believe they all took the same path though. fladervy getting to the crossroads here as well. Yeah, they all took the top path, so not much to note about that. TGH and Nero are entering or getting close to the battle line section. They're falling down the ravine here, where they're about to enter the boss fight of this chapter. Fitting through that little shortcut there nicely. It is a pretty tight gap, but you can make certain setups for it so that it gets more consistent, so that you don't die. Because if you do hit the spikes and die, that can be a pretty costly death. Because you have to fall through 3 gaps in a row without dying. This Kevin block here is going to give you a lot of speed, and you're just going to use that to fly straight through that room into the fight. And now this is battle line. You unlock the next screen by continuing to rush towards her until she retreats into the next screen. And this gives a lot of room for cool movement options. You just have to get to like 3 or 4 different places in each given screen. There's also falling rocks, and she starts doing other things with them later that, yeah, it's extra gimmicks in the second half of the fight. She also shoots projectiles at you that once again just track based off of your movement. You can barely beat out the fireballs in that room right there. So yeah, there are movement cycles involved with these ones as well, just because she always shoots in the same pattern. Nice ultra dash there, flying straight through that screen. You can skip grabbing that feather on Tiege's end. So I don't know exactly, because TGH doesn't have his file timer on, so I'm not sure what his full game time is and in-game time at the moment. But him and Nero, at least in real time, are looking to be pretty close right now. Yeah, they're like 2 seconds apart right now. So this is the second half of the fight where these rocks start getting controlled, and she moves them around. In a lot of cases, you actually use them for boosts of height, like that rising one there. And at the end of this screen as well, you get a slightly bigger jump from there. Just jump over. And now this is the last screen of the battle line fight. It's just a really long feather chase. You just gotta make it to the end without her shooting you. She aims at you the whole screen. That may put Nero ahead. He took a costly death there. The screen can be really bad just because of how long it is. He went for a nice ultra strat there, but just threw himself right into the spikes, unfortunately. So yeah, we'll see when they reach the chapter complete screen. But Nero's going to be finishing out of chapter 6 first. With a nice 546. So this is chapter 7, the summit. They are really close, but there's so much room for the things to go wrong or really right here in this chapter, because it is very, very long. It's over 8 minutes long. The longest the longest chapter so far in the run. And it consists of little throwbacks, I guess, to each chapter that you've played through in the game. So this one right here that Nero is in with the traffic blocks, this is chapter 1, and it's just chapter 1 design screens, but with slightly more difficult obstacles this time. See, I wish I knew what TGH's file time was right now. Because they are very close, but he only has his IL timer on, so I can't really see until he finishes a chapter. This is the 1,000 meters section. 1,000 meters up, you're getting to the chapter 2 section with the dream block coming back. Because you have 2 dashes now, you can do an extra tech. Narrow failing one there. You can do an extra tech where after dashing into a dream block, you do a hyper dash out of it. It's kind of weird since you're in the air. It is a very precise window where you can input that hyper dash, but it is the fastest way of exiting out of them and flying forward to the next part. If you miss input one, you just fly straight down. Since you input a downright dash, you just die. It can be pretty dangerous. This is 1,500 meters, the chapter 3 section. Even more dumb this time with the cycles. Dust bunnies everywhere. Both of them making a very tight cycle actually on that room. That's a really hard one to pull off consistently. This room is really quick with all the ultras that you can throw in there. From Teach's end. And already out of there for both of them. That went pretty good for each of them. This is 2,000 meters, the chapter 4 ridge section. With more left and right wind and clouds. There's a little shortcut that you can do, a little secret berry path to take to the top. It is just a secret path for a berry, but it does skip a little bit more time spent like dodging obstacles and stuff, so it is faster. Right here's an auto score skip. You can barely make it across this gap using the extra speed that you get from standing on that block. And then wall bounce up to the end off of that tiny little rock there. Going pretty easily for both of them. Doing a little wall bounce just to get out of that screen faster so you don't have to wait for the block to go up, since that one is pretty slow. Running along with the wind there, just taking them flying through that screen. Thanks to wall bounces, once again, you don't have to really activate any of the blocks in that screen but that one. It's kind of hard to notice, but Tej... Oh yeah, you tried it. Didn't quite get it. You can do a demo dash there, the thing I talked about where you get a crouching dash. And squeeze in between that block and the wall. And get yourself right on top of it right away. It is kind of precise. But it does save a little time, because you don't have to like grab onto the side. This is 2,500 meters, the chapter 5 section. With the dash blocks coming back. They give you a lot of speed. Right here on Narrow's end, normally you have to take a red bubble up to the top of that screen so that you can make that key, but by doing a little spike jump off of the wall, you can get just enough height to climb up yourself and not have to worry about getting the bubble. This is door skip, a big meme. It's like a second time save. You can just squeeze through those doors right there and avoid hitting the buttons. Slightly faster. And now Narrow and TGH, what it looks like to be neck and neck entering the final section of the game. So this is 3,000 meters, the summit of the mountain. And the mechanics of the Chapter 7 portion are kind of like Ridge. It has the wind coming back, but this time there is an updraft and a downdraft rather than left and right. And that affects, instead of your speed, your gravity. So you fall much faster throughout the air. And so in this case, your movement is affected a lot. It plays a lot faster paced, but still can be done very cleanly. You can easily get caught up in your movement here and just get stuck somewhere, and it can be annoying, but with a lot of experience, it just looks as fluid as these guys are playing it right now. And now both flying up at basically the exact same time. Now entering the updraft section, where it looks like they're gonna be on the moon. All of a sudden the wind just turned upside down, and now their gravity is very low. These flags are a lot slower paced, just due to the nature of them. Your low gravity and the obstacles that you have to go through are a lot longer and take more time to get through. And because of it, deaths here can be very punishing. So for a lot of people, even though this one is like more slow pace, this can be the more annoying part of Chapter 7 for certain people. So that is the end of the updraft section. Now they just have a few more checkpoints left in the run. They're going to be flying up to the very top. And now the wind has settled. This is just normal movement making it to the end. This is a very close to PB run for Nero, actually. Very, very close to PB. Honestly, maybe getting it. Nero may be PBing right now on this race. Let's see, this is the final flag. Time's going to be ending when he reaches the top of here. I think he has it if he doesn't die. That's a 3-second PB for Nero. He got a 29:55. What time did TGH get? That was really close. Wait, TGH getting an 8:22 summit. That's incredible. How did I not even notice that? What file time did he get? I don't know who won. We're about to see. 29:37. Okay, TGH winning by 18 seconds. That was still incredibly close. Nero putting off a really good showing. Being able to come so close to TGH is really hard, but he pulled out a PB to do it. That was insane. Five and 8 deaths. Both very, very consistent death counts. That's really low. fladervy now entering the final section as well. No more than maybe a minute behind. On the final flag. Skipping that flag there, you can jump past these checkpoints and actually avoid the checkpoint. Thankfully, he doesn't die. Because if you do, then you don't respawn there. You go back to the next one. That is a little risky. Sometimes it is faster to do so. Now entering the final flag. Oh, getting an accidental corner boost off of there, just throwing him right into the spikes. He meant to get a dash jump. Yeah, like that. That puts you right over. Should still be getting a 30-minute time from him. Barely? Okay, no. He takes the suspense a little further. Yeah, getting a 31 flat. Just a little bit off from the others. Yeah, getting a 31 flat. Just a little bit off from the others. That was a really good showing from everyone. I especially didn't expect that there would be a PB to happen. It kind of slipped past my eyes. I TGH had an amazing summit time. Narrow got a PB. I was just too busy talking about stuff to even notice that they were on incredible pace. But yeah, there are only 6 sub-30 runners ever. That's like one of the hardest things to do in the game. And 2 of them just happened in this race.